If you've ever felt yourself navigating the tensions between passion versus survival, let me have you know, Waneso, you are in very good company. We're going to have some really great conversations. But if you're wondering, what is this and who is this lady you're speaking to? Dumelang Bakhaetso, my name is Dumelo Candice Sillo, and I have the incredible pleasure of being the host of the YouthXConversations, where we get to dive into diverse perspectives and thought-provoking dialogue. And it wouldn't be dialogue if I didn't have individuals sitting here with me. And I just want to let you guys know, it's a conversation. I know in your common life, you may not necessarily have dialogue like this with a mic in your face, the lights are on, the faces are beat, but I reassure you, there are a lot of young people who are going to be watching this, and you're going to be sowing some really great seeds in which they can walk away with maybe a complete change in perspective. Wouldn't that be very enriching? I wish I had something like this when I was a little bit younger, so I could figure out this passion versus survival controversial topic. Now, if you're wondering, Kibo Mang, as I mentioned, I'm sitting here with Cheryl Manenza, who is the Senior Manager of Paid Media. Big deals in the business. We've got Mongezi Sokangile, who is the Senior Marketing Manager of Brand Strategy. We have Eleni Albanus, who is the Head of Market Conduct Risk Assurance. Again, a long title, but for great work that she does. And last but certainly not least, we have Keketo Makape, who is the Head of Strategy and Operations. This is a time of reflecting on the youth of 1976, their remarkable contributions. And when we really take a moment to think about it, we're extremely privileged. We get to have conversations about passion versus survival when all they knew was survival through the context of sacrifice. And when you look at where you are today, maybe we can just start with Keketo because you're the closest to me, right? You are currently in a position which isn't necessarily spoken about. I know when I was a young person navigating the world of schooling, I didn't know there was something called the Head of Strategy and Operations at Nedbank. I was not aware that that even existed. How did you go about choosing this career path?
If I think back, honestly, I remember a time when there was a famous South African chicken fast food brand that had amazing ads that we'd all remember. And I remember opening, I think it was like a drum magazine or something, and reading about the advertising agency that was behind that work. I must have been early high school, and I remember thinking, I think that's what I want to do. So it was advertising then, but as I progressed in my journey of schooling, I was exposed more to the broader concept of marketing, which is sort of how I landed here. So I guess it started all the way back then in school. Yeah.
So, Mongezi, I could ask you the same question. How did you arrive at this point? Don't worry, Eleni, we have not forgotten you. We know you're very much here.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose for me, it was interesting. I studied a degree in information science, not really knowing what information science was, because it was just like, it probably sounds cool if someone asked me what I studied. And it was just one of those things where I actually got into the job that I was supposed to do with said degree, where I realized that this is not my portion. Like I can't be, doing data analytics. And I always had a kind of spark for creativity. And I told my parents I wanted to be a graphic designer, and they laughed. And I suppose subsequent to that, it was what is the next best thing for me, which would allow me to kind of flex both the creative part of, my personality, my brain, but also still leverage some of those analytical pieces that I had that I developed. And yeah, I mean, it was a series of serendipitous events, let's call it.
Serendipitous, write that down, put that in your next conversation to impress someone.
Yeah, I mean, I ended up in a place where I got an opportunity to test out marketing before I even, had to commit to it and fell in love immediately. And yeah, the rest is history.
The contribution of parents in the decisions that we've made, especially as it pertains to careers. Cheryl, you had a little bit of a moment. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your experience?
I watch a lot of American content. I actually wanted to be a publicist. It's not a thing here in South Africa, but I've eventually navigated into something like public relations, and eventually I ended up in media strategy. I didn't even know that was a thing that existed. So I ended up here just by chance. I didn't have a job lined up after I rejected like a really big opportunity
Must
with
be
a
nice.
with a major FMCG company to be in the grad program, and I was like, I don't want to move there because it's a different location. I'm away from my family. So my parents have always been very integral in the things that I did, but they were also incredibly supportive. When I told them I wanted to be a publicist / PR agent, they were like, no, that's absolutely fine. So I've always had that support, fortunately. But I think obviously as time has gone on and I've proven that you can really make a name for yourself, all of what they may have struggled with to accept it has dissipated. And I think that I've also like imparted that onto my younger siblings, which has been great. So I've been fortunate in that respect.
Beautiful, and it's great that you have not only the evidence that you can enjoy, but that other people can see and kind of take a nugget of wisdom from what you've been able to do. Eleni, I want us to blend in both of those perspectives. So looking into how you arrived at this point, it is a little bit of a tongue twist when I say your title, but it's interesting that we don't often think of positions that you occupy and what it entails. Did you ever think you'd find yourself where you are, and where did it all begin?
Yeah. If I had to take myself back to when I was in school, I would never have imagined that I need to be here. And I do find myself in moments, I think I'm fortunate that I found my passion. And I often think back, I'm like, I wonder what little Eleni would say. She'd be so proud, and I feel like it's so rare, or it's not common enough that people find what their passion is early on in their career. But it didn't start that way for me. When it was time for me to study, I didn't have many options. So I had to stay very close to home, 3 kilometers from the house. Luckily, there was university there. Limited things that I could choose from. It was also a tiny university. And I just chose what I thought I would enjoy, still not knowing what I would do. Degree finished, started applying for jobs, was getting all of the declines. And then a recruitment agency phoned me and they said, we like your CV, but we want you to work for us. And I was like, it's not what I studied. Let me give it a go. I get to go to Johannesburg and, leave the small town behind and, start building something for myself. I quickly realized I didn't enjoy it. And I was able to move to another recruitment agency and still thought, okay, it's not the work, it's not the place, it's the work that's not aligning with me. So I spent the rest of the year saving to do my honors, still not knowing what it is I want to do. And it was actually during the honors that I met a lecturer that the way he conducted his class, I was like, wow, you can change the way that you think. You can think this way. There was such a unique perspective that he shared. And then I was fortunate enough to start my career those years back with Nedbank in risk management. And again, I had the most incredible boss. And I think when you've got someone that believes in you and you've got that little bit of a passion, I think that just made me realize this is it for me.
There probably are a lot of barriers of entry for young people. We know that there were a plethora of them. Oh, did you hear that? Plethora. We read that serendipitous. Now saying plethora. There are a multitude of things that the youth of 1976 were encountering, and holistically a system that had created a ceiling for them. Yeah. What do you think in present day 2025 youth culture and the context that young people find themselves in? What do you think are some of the difficulties that they're navigating in choosing? Is it passion? Is it to strive for the things that I want? How do I navigate between doing what you love and doing what you need to do in order to get to where you want to be?
I'll give that one a bash. And the biggest thing that I've learned working in kind of youth marketing over the last 12 years is you find that a lot of South Africans and South African youth are operating from a place of survival. And survival just drives necessity. Like we're doing exactly what we need to do to get to that next point, the next paycheck or whatever it is. And one of the characteristics that's kind of overarching, if you think about South Africans, is also the fact that they're industrious. Our youth are very much the same. So as much as they are doing what they need to do to survive, they're making the time and they're making the provision to do the things that they're passionate about. Okay. So yeah, I'll do my 9 to 5 at Mr. Price, but best believe when I get home at 6 p.m., 7 p.m., I'm going to jump onto that computer. I'm producing the song that I think is going to be the next hit. And even finding themselves in the right spaces. I think South Africa has become a bit of a melting pot as well in terms of just the access to opportunities. So, there's festival platforms where people are able to kind of profile themselves. There's platforms like YouthX where, we are kind of giving people the platform to take that next step.
I'll plug it.
Yeah, I had to plug it. I had to plug it. And it really is about the fact that, there's that relentless spirit. We keep using the word relentless, yeah. And there's that relentless spirit for wanting more for themselves. And that's what I think differentiates where South Africa is now and perhaps where it would have been previously.
In what way is social media impacting the decisions that young people are making as far as careers are concerned?
I think it can be both great and destructive. And I think one important thing is it always depends on your perspective. So take from social media what you need to take from it, but be careful about how you allow it to sort of negatively impact you. So I think one thing when I was thinking about what are sort of the barriers, like you were saying, to people pursuing their passions or even knowing what options are out there for them, representation and exposure. And I think social media has really opened up people's minds and worlds around what's possible and what's possible for me. Me, black woman in South Africa, me, black girl from Mafikeng. It doesn't matter what it is. I think what social media is helping us do is to see people like us doing things we didn't even think we could do. Even talking about, you've mentioned our job titles. I mean, when you're young, in your school-going years, you haven't even heard these titles. Typical professions typically, and maybe now it's extended to like content creation, etc. But being online really expands your mind in terms of what's possible. So again, if your lens is positive, I think that's what you'll see, that a lot is possible for me and a lot is possible for me. Yeah.
Oh, beautiful. From my perspective, and I have the privilege of being able to play around that space as a content creator on some days. And it really is an incredible privilege because I get to diversify the craft that already I've spent my years crafting, which is television, one, but also theater. I started off in the theater space and I always imagined that this is the ceiling for me, but a ceiling I'm comfortable with. If I can just get to Broadway. But I'm so privileged that even on the days when I'm not on set back to back, and with the unexpected, inconsistent nature of being an actress in South Africa, we don't have the day-to-day privilege of, I'm on set every day, I have a consistent income. We're independent contractors, we're freelancers. So once that show ends, once that production comes to a halt, where to from there? And it's great that I get to collaborate with brands like Nedbank, plug, where then we can collaborate and we can then amplify voices and conversations like this one. Yeah. Let's speak about risk-taking. Maybe I should ask you first and foremost, Eleni, what risks have you taken in your journey to be where you are?
I know when people hear risk, they think about something really big and bad. Yeah. But I think the risk that I've taken in my career consistently is not shying away from trying something that I don't know how to do.
Love that.
So if there's something that needs to be done, Eleni's hand is up. A subsequent risk to that is that, that's less time with friends, with family, in the prime of your youth, when I was a youth. A younger youth.
When you were,
what do I mean?
What do you mean, ma'am?
There were sacrifices with friends and family to be able to progress in terms of where I want to be in my area of passion. But I think the biggest thing was saying yes when I wasn't 100% sure how. And I could have fallen flat on my face. But again, because I was full of perseverance and passion, I think I figured it out. I wasn't scared to fail.
You know what I think is really cool about that? Even when we think about the ceiling and maybe the things that people don't want to do, I think a big thing, one, is fear. So they don't want to explore and expand on career options. Also because you don't want to be seen as a scholar. People want to arrive, and that's not a drag to my fellow young people, but sometimes we're afraid of being embarrassed because of the things we don't know. We don't want to be caught serving. We want to be served.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
It's interesting. So
Yeah.
there's something that you said there, and I think the one thing is you should never confuse access for arrival, right? Because just simply because you have access to a room doesn't mean you've made it. You haven't arrived. You still need to put in those hours. You still need to, before you become the bigwig in the room, there's work to be done. So, there's the idea of saying yes all the time, but there's also knowing when to say no, right? And I suppose for me, that's where the risk came in. I was an intern at my first job, and they moved me from pillar to post trying to figure out where to put me, and it was in those conversations and in saying no to all of those different placements. Oh, do you want to be in ops? Do you want to be in sales? Do you want to be in logistics? Like, no. And I'd studied none of those things either, so I had no predisposition to those. And it was in saying no where I ended up in a place where I was able to make yes, a risky decision, because again, it was something that I wasn't familiar with, but something that kind of piqued my interest, which then gives me something to chase, right? Because that's where then that fuel from passion comes from.
One thing I love about risks is that there's also reward. And you guys are all evidence of reward when it comes to taking said risks. And thank you for what you shared. I mean, I was like, do you want to drop the mic with that? That do not confuse access with arrival. Put that on a t-shirt. Let's look at rewards. Some of the benefits when you look back from the risks you've taken.
If I think about the one risk I've taken, as you guys were speaking, I was reflecting. So after I studied at university, what typically happens, it is such a privilege, I have to acknowledge, to be able to go to university and to be able to finish it with whatever funding you're able to get. So I was very thankful for that. But from there, because everyone's like, okay, I've got that head start, I've got that degree, people are like, cool, internship or grad program, whatever it is. And I was like, nah. Terminal A, let's go. So I didn't do a gap year. I went to Asia to teach English, like many people do. It wasn't heartbreak. I know. No, it wasn't heartbreak. I just wanted to see the world. And it was a risk in the sense that at the time, you are well positioned to land a good job because you are in the very small percentage of people in the country who has the opportunity to graduate, right? But I thought, I really just want to try this. And what I wanted to say is the reward, to be honest, you don't see it when you're taking the risk. So in hindsight, of course, we can talk about the reward. It sounds all glamorous and nice. I had no idea if I'd be able to find a job in my industry. It's very easy to also have those thoughts of, everyone else will get a head start. By the time I get back, they'll be on their first or second promotion and I'll be starting as an intern. But at the time, that's what I wanted more. And if I look back, the reward has been the character development that happened. So while I put my professional development on pause, this other thing has really served me actually in how I do my personal life, in how I do my professional life. And if anything, I can see how it's given me an edge over people who went straight from school to work. So in that sense, it was a risk taken blindly, naively. I was just excited. But I'm so thankful I did it because I think it's really nurtured the sort of person that I am at work and everywhere else.
Taking the path less traveled.
Exactly.
Very exciting. Cheryl, do you want to add?
It's really interesting that people would really almost have the same paths, because I almost did what Kiki did when I couldn't find a job. I think a risk for me was turning down a nice cushy job at a major FMCG corporate and then saying, no, it's not really what I want to do because it's just not location based or where I want to be. And then saying yes to going into the agency space, because that taught me so much about work ethic. People in agencies work. And I got to learn so many different spheres around marketing because I worked with different clients and I worked with different types of people at all levels. And I had that access just to understand, okay, cool. So when I do step over onto that other side now, I have a little bit of a context and empathy a lot of the time in terms of the hard work that goes into it. So my reward has now been coming to this side and working with people on all spheres and all scopes to really, really just get to the best possible outcome because I understand both sides. And I also now have people who look like me and sound like me that I can emulate. I am so obsessed with my bosses. And I feel like that's a reward. I've found the mentors I have so often craved. I've had amazing bosses, but in this space, I really have that, wow, she looks like me, she sounds like me. I love that for myself.
So if you could have lunch with your younger self, what would you say to the younger you?
I think for my younger self, I would say stay balanced. You know, I was very, sharp, I'll study last minute, but I want to play sport and I want to do culture. Keep that up. You are developing a very well-rounded person. And you are all of your quirks, all of the things you feel like you need to change, fix, don't. They're going to do well for you in the future. And also, the best is yet to come.
Yeah.
And so is the money.
Amen.
My life's been a very interesting one. Eleni, that was Eleni in primary school, and Eleni, that was Eleni in high school, even in university, even when I started working. There were many insecurities and things that came along with me. But there was this strange tenacity. And I still to this day don't know where it came from. And I almost want to call it ignorance, but not in a bad way, which saw me through some things that I'm like, you really did that, you know? I would honestly say just keep going in every single difficult situation that you're going through, exactly to what you said, is going to make you better. And I don't know if anybody out there needs to hear this because in those moments they are so difficult, but whatever it is, work-wise, personal, anything, you just feel that life is going to end. You can't show up the way you're supposed to at work or at school. But trust me, it's building your character, and depending on your perspective, it will mold you to be great and do great. Yeah.
The biggest thing for me would be to just remind myself that I've got time.
Sure.
Because there's like this weird thing. So when I turned 16, my dad said, so I guess we're getting jobs, right? Because the gravy train is is leaving you behind. So and in those moments it always felt like I was trying to kind of catch up to like the other kids, right? So, oh, you're going to school, the kids are wearing Jordans. I don't know what a Jordan is at that point. I'm just,
Who's Jordan?
like who's like that? I just know Michael Jordan, but I don't know he has shoes. And the biggest part with that is, like you guys mentioned earlier, someone said the comparison is the thief of joy. And it really was that, is, dude, you've got time. You are going to get to the point where you can do the nice things for yourself. But the discipline that you're learning by becoming self-sufficient, by becoming, slightly more independent a little bit earlier than everybody else is going to serve you so much in the long run. And things that people tend to struggle with are going to seem a hell of a lot easier for you. So I'll just be like, yo, dude, you've got plenty of time and you'll get there.
And I think that's not only relevant to younger you, but I think to everyone watching and listening, that stay young. Because the nature of the internet is such that I, at 15, can compare my life to a 27-year-old. So you can be like, oh, look at the bag she has. Oh, her body's serving tea. Clock it, sis. And there's all of these things and the pressures that are mounting on the shoulders of a 14-year-old adolescent. And it's like, you do indeed have time.
Side hustle culture is something that is huge within the youth demographic. And I've really, really appreciated sometimes when work gets really stressful, because it does. But when work gets really stressful, I love to bake. So I'll bake some cakes for my teammates. Sometimes I sell those cakes. I've sold matric VAC passports when I was in matric, like doing small minor things in the background that keep you really, really sane outside of work is really, really important. So keep pushing that. Make time for your family, make time for your friends. But work is just a small part of a bigger life that you're trying to build for yourself, and really, really understand those buckets for yourself.
Oh, that is so beautiful. You guys have all shared such incredible nuggets. So friends, while I can appreciate a whimsical approach to romanticizing our passions, especially in the time where you go and you watch reels, you watch these posts, and passion is paying for a very select few people. How do we then create a space and a conversation about the reality check? And I'm saying check as a double entendre. The reality check and the reality imali check, right? Let's dive into, does passion pay the bills, or does committing to that career, the road less traveled, for survival per se, pays the bills?
I would say yes, it does. But I think the approach for me really does have to be hybrid, because not everybody is going to be Candace and get paid to do what they love. Not everybody is going to be primo and get to make people laugh with 2 million followers on TikTok. And I think those things are the realities of that situation. So, guys, we're always going to need a plumber. We're always going to need a electrician. We're gonna need those things, and it might not be the glamorous job that you want to be known for doing. You want to be known as a producer, a music producer, a film producer, whatever it is. And really, I think the reality of it for me is, you could potentially balance the two. I'm going to chase my passion, and after hours, I'm an after hours DJ. Even if they're paying me 1,000 rand to be at Moja Cafe on a Sunday, like that might be what you have to do. But yeah,
Passion isn't always creative, but neither is passion a job.
Yes. Yes.
Usually, if you think about, let's say, a comedian or someone, what I'm passionate about, what I love is seeing people smile, seeing people laugh. When you know that as your root passion, the expression of it career-wise can look so different there. It isn't strictly then being a comedian. And likewise, if you love creating, the expression of that can be so different. It doesn't mean you have to become one thing. So I think once you just open your mind, and you will find that even in your 9 to 5, you could also be doing your passion. Even in the thing that you didn't think would be your dream job, you could still be expressing your passion because you've identified what it actually is. It's not a job title. It's a feeling. It's a thing. It's bigger than, just the role that you do.
Sometimes all the gold.
Yeah, sometimes some of the most profound lessons I've learned is in doing the things that I didn't want to do, but I had to do them to survive. I remember teaching English online, like from midnight to 6 a.m. because I needed to make extra money. I definitely wasn't passionate about it, but it paid the bills at the time. And I spoke earlier about side hustles. Guys, life is so long. You can do 5 different careers in your whole lifetime. So just because you have to do something to survive right now, it doesn't mean that later you won't be able to harness that to feed your passion. So do what you need to do to pay the bills, because no one's going to do that for you.
I reflect on just how blessed I am to be where I am as someone within the creative arts. And even what you were saying, that passion doesn't necessarily have to be a craft, doesn't necessarily have to be within the arts. What you've said, my passion was making my family smile, like very sincerely. I looked at, and it would be some of the most foolish things. I would take the lotto ticket and I would read it out as if I was a talk show host. And I never realized that a deep love for that particular craft or that particular skill was being deposited, which would then be harnessed over the years. And perhaps this is an encouragement for anyone who's listening to this, that you ought to do yourself the great service of diversifying on that passion, because you cannot just allow it to be this thing I love, this thing I enjoy. When you apply skill and strategy to that very thing you love, that's where the money comes. When you understand the business of the passion, then we can say the passion did pay because I took the passion seriously. And if it is something worth taking seriously, it's worth doing the heavy lifting of the work, the time and the investment that it requires. So that's just my word of encouragement for anyone listening. As we round up, maybe not just yet. It's great to know the stories of how far we've come and what we have overcome. Maybe from one of you. What are the greatest things that you have overcome?
Got into corporate at quite a young age. And there were a couple of things that are quite interlinked. And it was believing that I've got a voice that deserves to be heard, that I've earned my seat at that table. And there were two ways that would manifest. Is I was hired for my skill, right? There was a reason I was there, but I thought that there are older people around me. And sometimes there were people that looked a certain way that would make me feel that I couldn't challenge them. And if I had to give you that practically, I was brought up in a very strict household. So people that looked like my dad, and not physically looked, but with the older men, I thought I was not allowed to challenge them.
Sure.
But then I had to remind myself, but you are hired here as the risk manager or whatever I was at the time. They might be whatever they are in that room, capacity in that room. My point is valid. I can challenge that person. So the hurdle that I've had to overcome, that I'm so proud of myself for, and I continue to try work on that, is to say my piece humbly, but to own my space as well.
I heard a quote once: speak even if your voice is trembling.
Yeah.
Speak.
Live by it.
Let us sit in a time capsule of reflecting back of the youth to the youth of 1976. We can have a great appreciation and honor the fact that we are here simply because of the sacrifices that they've made. If you were able to write a letter, put up a billboard, and write a text perhaps to the youth of 1976, knowing they could all read it as a form of a soothing balm, encouragement, appreciation, what would you say?
I think mine is really simple. Like, put it on a t-shirt. I'm only in this room because you dared to dream. And that for me is the biggest thing. Is like, we would never be in this room today, in the offices of Nedbank, in the airport. Like, we wouldn't be in any of those places if they didn't have a dream. That would be my billboard t-shirt.
You dare to dream. I'm here because you dare to dream. Cheryl?
Thank you. I think that's the biggest thing that I would say, and I think it feeds off what Mongs has just said. Thank you. I wouldn't be here without you, and a lot of the things that you had to do to sacrifice for me to be here, I cannot fathom. So thank you, and Mama, I made it, is what I would actually say, because it blows my mind every single day that I get to be here, that I get to step into the rooms that I do, that I work with the people that I do. So, Inkosi, ngiyabonga, thank you. Like, that's all I can honestly say, because it was a lot that they did for us.
Okay, good.
I use the analogy of a parent, right? When you've lost a parent, and every milestone, if you think of a young lady when she has a child, when she gets married, wanting to wake that parent up to be like, look what I'd become. Look at what all your hard work did for me. Just to thank them face to face. So say, look what you did. Thank you. So that would be me.
Thank you.
Thank you.
To all of you, thank you for the nuggets. Thank you for showing up the way you do. We may not necessarily know what it's taken in order for you to be here, but the fact that you're here says a lot. And for that, I honor each and every one of you for your time and just for your wisdom that you have very selflessly shared. This was far more than it was a conversation. It feels a lot like a masterclass. In whatever language of choice, we just want to say thank you. You've heard it here first. Re a leboga, go menagane is what I would say. But in your language, make sure that you comment below as we've wrapped up a phenomenal Youth X conversation, the final episode. If you haven't caught the previous ones, make sure that you do. And while you're at it, comment below and tell us, how are you navigating the world of passion versus survival? So many nuggets have been shared and notes that you definitely need to apply. From me, Dumelo Candisillo, it's been nothing shy of a mighty, mighty privilege. Consider yourselves remarkably blessed. And youth of 1976, again, re a leboga.